Well, hello, everybody, and welcome back to the 2014 Endurance Summit. Today I've got an ultra cool, actually I'm geeking out on this one. It's going to be super cool. We've got a really, really neat person on the line today. His name is Jay Dicharry, and I hope I'm pronouncing that right, Jay.
Yep.
And Jay has a super, super cool facility, but I'm going to tell you a little bit about Jay first. He's actually from New Orleans, and he's a master of physical therapy and also board-certified sports clinical specialist. But that just kind of touches the surface because Jay's built his international reputation as an expert in biomechanical analysis as the director of the Speed Clinic at the University of Virginia. And this is like a world-renowned biomechanics clinic. So for those of you who don't know about it, look it up. I'll give you Jay's current clinic links too as well. But through this innovative venture, Jay was able to blend the fields of clinical practice and engineering to better understand and eliminate the cause of overuse injuries in endurance athletes. Now, a lot of people say stuff like that, but this is a really special application and place and group of people. So listen up. His unique approach goes outside the traditional model of therapy and aims to correct imbalances before they affect your performance. Jay literally wrote the book on running gait assessments. He's the author of a fantastic book called Anatomy for Runners, which is how I found out about Jay, ironically through a runner. He writes columns for numerous magazines and has published over a dozen professional journal articles and 3 book chapters. Jay has had an active research career and consults for numerous footwear companies, the U.S. Air Force, and USA Track and Field. His research focus on footwear and the causative factors driving overuse injury continues at Rebound, which is I believe one of his clinics, part of maybe Rep as well, or I don't know if they're one and the same, and will provide its patients with an unmatched level of innovation and success. Having taught in the sports medicine program at UVA, he brings a strong bias toward patient education and continues to teach nationally to elevate the standard of care for therapists, physicians, and coaches working with endurance athletes. Now, in addition to his clinical distinction, Jay's certified coach through both the U.S. Track and Field Association and U.S. Cycling Federation, and certified golf fitness instructor through Titleist Performance Institute. He's also an athlete. He's got a competitive history in swimming, triathlon, cycling, and running events on both national and local level, and has coached athletes from local standouts to national medalists. He's excited to share this passion with the team at Rebound and explore the Pacific Northwest on his family with knobbies, skis, boards, and soles. And certainly in the Pacific Northwest, there's so much outdoor stuff to do. So welcome to the show, Jay. I really appreciate you coming on and joining us today.
Thanks for having me, Manny. It's great to be here.
Well, let's get right into it. We're talking to all kinds of endurance athletes today, but probably most of the folks out there are going to be into triathlon. So I might focus a little bit on that, although not exclusively, because I think what you do would address any kind of any application in any sport. But interestingly enough, and I mentioned this earlier, I learned about your book, Anatomy for Runners, from a running client. Somebody who's running, high miles, competitive, kind of middle-aged person who's gotten back into running. And anyway, I picked it up. Can you tell us a little bit more about how that book came about and why you wrote it?
For sure. I found myself in a very interesting kind of situation over the years, and yeah, you have this kind of blending of disciplines, right? And it'd be nice if there was kind of a one-stop shop that would actually tell you, how can I truly become a better athlete? And so to really become a better athlete, you have to combine multiple fields, right? You need, coaches to obviously help us with our physiological training. You need people from the clinical realm to help make sure we stay healthy. And you need engineers to basically sit here and say, okay, well, here's how, the stresses of training affect your body on a daily basis, and here's how to actually optimize your mechanics. And unfortunately, that's, 3 kind of entire professions. And so what I really try to do is synthesize all this information together into a book that will let people sort of understand what endurance training really does to you. And sure, while the book is called Made for Runners, it really applies to all endurance athletes. The whole first third of the book is basically just understanding how bones and tendons and ligaments all adapt differently to training, and how our individual physiology sort of biases how we may accommodate and adapt differently than your training partner. And so it's what I call almost like a people may call it exercise 101. It's probably not 101. It's probably like 301 or 401. But I really believe that athletes need to have good information and good resources, and there really was no good resource that really synthesized a lot of information out there and gave it to people in a digestible form. So the whole first third of that book is very much education on what endurance training really does to you. And then the next section of the book kind of gets into some self-evaluation we can do and talk about what gait is and how gait influences how we heal, adapt, and respond to training, and how you optimize your gait and from a quantitative standpoint, and ways to assess your gait. And then the third part is ways to assess your body. And it goes along, simple analogies all the time. If you want to make, good dinner tonight, and you want to make good pasta sauce, you need a good recipe for that sauce. I have my grandmother's from back in New Orleans, and it's probably better than anybody else's because it's awesome. But we also have to have good quality ingredients. And so, while people love talk about the right way to run, or the right way to pedal or swim, or swing a golf club or anything out there, you have to start with a good body. And if you don't, if you as an athlete don't take time to ensure that you've got enough mobility for your sport, to make time that you have enough stability, enough strength, enough power to optimize your body, you're going to show up at that sport, deficient, and that's going to cause problems with your form, problems with fatigue, and compromise your performance. So it's ultimately trying to give people a functional tool they can use to help perform better on their own.
Yeah, and that's a really good point. This has come up over and over and over again when I'm talking to the technique coaches, and what they say is, a lot of them say, this doesn't come up initially, but it'll come up, after we start having a bit of a conversation, which is that a fair number of people come in to be coached in technique, but it's not even possible for them to use the proper technique because their body won't even go there. So, but they don't necessarily have the tools to get somebody to the point where they're ready to be able to learn the technique. And I think that's somewhat of what you do. Is that right?
Correct. Yeah, I do both. I mean, I would say that, yes, I certainly, use tools and techniques and some fancy stuff in a lab to optimize and quantify form. But again, if you're going to show up, with tomatoes not ripe yet, you're not going to have good ingredients to put in your dinner, and there's just no way you'll be able to perform effectively. Just minutes before I did this interview with you, I was doing an evaluation of a runner who came in and actually has wonderful gait. She's a very efficient gait strike, brings a bunch of very beneficial things to the table. Yet she's got chronic issues with her Achilles, and it's not a problem with her form, right? There's an issue with her body we had to work on that had nothing to do with her form, and in fact, there's no way you can actually cue her form as is right now. So we had to actually say, look, you know what? I love the way you run. You're doing the best job as you possibly can with a given body, but if we actually put a foot that would move a little bit better into the equation, a foot that was a little more stable into the equation, then we can actually do some things that will dramatically improve your gait even further. So for sure, both have to be optimal. Yeah, and that's in my mind kind of what makes you a little more unique than the next guy. There are a lot of PTs out there who specialize or say they specialize in sports performance, but and this came up actually yesterday in an interview with another a professional, where they had been in practice for 24 years, and then they went and did some more work and learned some new things and realized that even what they had done in the past, which was advanced, a person with that much experience, was their skill set was not what it is now with this different kind of viewpoint. So. You're
your business is pretty niche. I mean, it's really specialized. Can you tell us a little bit about what got you interested in human performance and what you do? Maybe just spell it out a little more. That's so unique, makes you kind of like a standalone.
For sure, and I think that I've morphed my career into what I have because I got frustrated. I swam growing up competitively for years, and I brought a lot of fitness to the table. In my high school, you were sort of asked/forced to run when you were in shape, and it was always frustrating to me. I could basically show up pretty much untrained as far as running and run really well and run with the varsity folks, and I would run fast, and I'd get aches and pains and be sore and hurt, and I wouldn't be able to really train, but probably one day a week outside of actual meets. And I got frustrated with the fact that I was in great shape in swimming. I was still swimming, 15, 20 hours a week, yet I couldn't really run, and it was aggravating. And I'd go see different clinicians, and they'd say, "Oh, well, you shouldn't run. You're having pain. You should stop running." And I just didn't like the fact that I could do so much in one sport, but not in another sport. And so, I don't like getting bad answers. I don't like saying, well, you should just stop or rest. And I've kind of made it my passion to try and find out, what's the real problem, right? Like, why can't someone really do this? So I went to, various courses of education. I won't get into every course, but, basically wound up becoming a physical therapist. And I love what I do. It's a way for me to look at things quantitatively and get a really good in-depth education on musculoskeletal, assessment. But then, after practicing a bunch of years, I got frustrated again because I found myself in a position where I was kind of like everybody else. You kind of went by your clinical experience and by what was out in the research, and it was lacking to me. So I went to our former department chair, Dr. Casey Kerrigan, who came to UVA from Harvard, and said, look, you just set up one of the nicest gait labs in the entire world at UVA. Why can't we use this for individual assessment? Why does this all have to be just about research? And, she was, willing and innovative enough to take a risk on this. And so, while the UVA lab has been amazing, we still pumped out, we've put out about 30 papers at that lab in the past, 7 or 8 years since I've been involved in personally. It's a very proficient research lab. We really try to make it a big focus on individual assessment. So, people always have dreams about, well, wow, what if I could go ahead and get all this fancy stuff that, only certain elite athletes have access to? Well, we have better than that. And so we really try to get to nuts and bolts of what really affects performance, what affects injury. We had true objective numbers on every single person who came through. And so what we've done is correlate things clinically. I still do full clinical evaluations on every single patient I see, but then I also correlate those clinical findings with objective information on how you run, how you bike, right? We get quantitative numbers to show how that plays out in form, and we can really see specifically where things are becoming overloaded, how things in your form are influencing your tissue, how your tissue is influencing your form. So it's just made a very nice kind of synthesis to really become more objective and give people better answers. So it's all about trying to make things much more specific. So if you say, I've got chronic Achilles tendinopathy or chronic, knee pain, whatever your symptoms may be, I really don't care about your symptoms. I care about the problem driving those symptoms. And so I've tried to figure out and kind of unmask, what are those problems? How do we identify them? How do we fix them? And then to really come full circle, how do you take those, corrections that you're going to make from the body side, integrate those into the form corrections? And that's when you really, really made a difference. So I think that, I do serve in a niche of a niche of a niche, right? But I've been pretty happy with what we're able to offer and with the impact we're able to put out there in this community.
Yeah, and that's, again, I can't emphasize enough how important that is because, I don't have anything near what you have, but the focus of my work is also on looking at, root structural and movement causes in of things that people show up for,
Yep.
since I don't treat symptoms. So, and it's huge because nobody is looking at that. It's so incredibly rare. So so that's, and for those who are listening, this is exactly why I wanted Jay to come on the program, because he's got such a cool and unique thing that he's doing. So, in terms of endurance athletes, you see all kinds of people, but what kinds of problems do you see in endurance athletes that are typical, people who come up to see you in your facility?
For sure. So, it's if you think about endurance training, right, and specifically you talk about, triathlete and swim, bike, and run, primarily they're single plane sports. And, so running, you're primarily moving in one plane. Cycling, you're primarily moving in one plane. Swimming, it's a little bit more of the multi-plane stability aspect, but those patterns are so biased into, we call internal rotation of the upper extremities. And so again, you're constantly reinforcing this one pattern. And so the thing is, endurance athletes get really, really, really good at, uniplane development, but they don't get really good at kind of multi-plane stability. And so, for example, for running, right? So when they were running, you've got, obviously you're running forward, but you also have forces, compressing you down to the ground. You have forces moving you left to right. You have to be able to stabilize and respond to all those forces. The example I use all the time is, don't fire a cannon from a canoe. You have to basically make sure that you're stable enough to maintain proper postural alignment, to maintain optimal form, to maintain a progression forward. And so many athletes don't take time to work on these things. They wind up with issues in other planes that break them down. From the cycling side, I love cycling. Don't take this wrong, but pure cyclists are some of the worst athletes I've seen, and I don't mean that in a derogatory way, but if you use the word athlete to me, somebody who can do multiple different things, different skills well, right? Cycling is so linear and so specific, and it's a kind of the same repetitive pattern, and we get really poor at, working on lateral and rotational stability. That's why a lot of cyclists have problems, not because they can't develop force, in that pure straight ahead, what we call the sagittal plane, but because they can't stabilize rotation. And then their posture tends to change, or alignment changes as they ride, and they wind up with, back pain and neck pain and wrist pain and all these neck things and knee issues, and because, they haven't worked in that comprehensive development. And from the swimming side, again, we wind up with that, that over kind of rotation and kind of protraction or kind of slump shoulder position that becomes so prominent. And then, so, you get in the water, that's the way people sit all day at work. And so, it's like we're constantly reinforcing these sort of poor positions as they're training. And then, you stick air bars on there, again, it gets even worse for the cycling perspective. So it's all about kind of bring people, into a better aligned position, better aligned posture, and then fixing these kind of, these repetitive movement patterns. So that's basically the root cause. And then when you start talking about what types of things we see, I mean, we see injuries all over the place. I mean, for sure, I think that the most common things that we see are going to be, anterior knee pain, shin splints, and low back pain are the common ones in runners. In cyclists, it's overwhelmingly knee pain, and then some, hand and neck, or hand numbness and neck pain, and then swimmers, obviously, it's shoulder impingement. So it's trying to basically, factor in, what's going on with their body, what's going on with their form, and trying to correct those imbalances.
So, okay, now, in your book, you've got some really specific things for people to do to help to self-assess and perhaps resolve some of these issues. But just, what would be some really general types of things? Say you got your typical Ironman triathlete, they're training, 20, 25 hours a week, or even if they're, they have a family and they're doing, say, 10 to 15 or whatever. They're time crunched. Like, what are, they're going to be really hesitant to give up their training time, but what are the things that they should be doing to make sure that they don't self-destruct?
Yeah, so I'll answer that in sort of two ways. Number one, if I could literally beg the attention of every listener out there, I would ask you to look at your calendar. Everyone's time crunched, right? But you know what? What if you basically subbed out 30 to 45 minutes a week, okay, which is not that big of a difference in your total training volume, and put some time into body development? It will pay off in spades in the short term and the long term. In one, keeping you healthy so you can keep doing what you want to do, and number two, in actually improving your performance. If you want to talk about, some plyometric and strength work later, I'm happy to. But the research is overwhelmingly clear that, the whole idea behind strength training and endurance training are not mutually exclusive. You can get benefits and progressions and improvements in both at the same time, and that's part of the work that I do here in my lab. So number one is, look at your schedule, figure out a way to put some time in to help yourself improve. The second part of this is I really am not going to tell you there's a magic exercise, but I will tell you there's a good way for us all to be aligned, right? And so I think one of the biggest things people can do is not spend more time doing more different stuff, but just do the stuff you are doing well, right? So many people, we swim, bike, and run, or other sports if you've made other things, but we spend most of our time sitting at work. And so, we wind up with a kind of slumped spine, get a protracted, rounded shoulders, forward head position, and an unstable back. And then, we basically stand up and we go swim, bike, and run. We put ourselves in these kind of chronic postures. And so we wind up taking that habit of, I feel normal when I'm slumped in my shoulders and my head's forward and my back is in a bad position, because that feels normal, because that's what you're doing for most of your day every day. And then all of a sudden you take that, poorly developed body, and how do you ever expect that, that perception of normal, okay, which is wrong, right, to be corrected somehow when you swim, bike, and run? Like, you're putting your body in a bad state of alignment while you're swim, biking, and running. It's the worst thing to do. So, I really believe paying attention to posture alignment is the single most important thing endurance athletes can do. Some simple little tips. I mean, if you just stand up and just relax, just stand like you normally do, and think about where weight is in your body, right? And most people tend to do the same thing. They tend to lock their knees, they tend to hang out in the ligaments in front of their hip, they tend to kind of let their shoulders roll forward. And so if you show up with this position and you go run, I don't care what form coach you talk to, you're going to run awful. Okay, there's no way you can take in bad tomatoes and put them in and make good pasta sauce. So the whole idea is with this: think about your alignment. The single biggest tip I can give to everybody listening is, find neutral in your spine. Don't change the position of your pelvis. Try and drop your chest forward a little bit. And by dropping your rib cage forward, okay, what you'll notice is you feel weight go more towards the middle part of your foot. And when you do that, you're going to notice that you tend to bring your spine in a different position. So we're trying to basically find that as our neutral or normal alignment, okay, and try and replicate that position when you're standing brushing your teeth, if you're making your kids lunch, if you're on the phone at work, if you're standing on one leg doing single leg balance exercises, if you're at the gym, okay, doing things in standing, put yourself in better alignment as you're already doing your strength training. If you just take a better posture alignment and put it into all things you're already doing, you'll have dramatic payoffs.
Yeah, that's actually really huge, because and that addresses a lot of the different issues that people have in terms of scheduling, even just a simple awareness exercise that you can practice whatever you're doing, standing in line, at the store, waiting at the bus stop. Not that many people do that, but in Southern California. but those are, because again, everybody's over the top busy. So how do you fit it in? And I like what you said. And I would even go as far as to say, carve out from your existing training schedule, like, throw out one of your workouts and put this in there, because it's that effective. And if you're exercising in your poor position, why then you're just strengthening that poor position and moving the problems forward. And I think you kind of emphasize that as well. So, all right. So somebody decides that, first of all, I don't know that people really know what goes on up in Bend, and maybe you can talk a little more about the lab and like what you do. Like if a person comes up, like what happens? They walk in the door. What's next?
Yeah, so I walk in the door and we chat, right? So the first thing I want to do is I ask, let's be clear. I'm not here for myself. I'm here to help other people. So the first thing I do is say, why are you here? What's going on? I like to find out some about their training history, their background, what kind of successes and failures they've had along the way, lessons they've learned in their training that tends to make sense for them. I mean, people are all individual, adapt and accommodate differently to training. So I want to find out what's worked and not worked from a performance standpoint, from a training standpoint. We talk about injuries. We talk about things that have been nagging for long term, things that are going to pop up short term, patterns you've seen over the years. And that gives me a lot of information. I mean, despite spending 15, 20 minutes talking about these things, it tells me a lot about what's happened to you as an individual over the years. And then that kind of, I already start to generate hypotheses on why things are happening. And I spend the rest of my time while you're here trying to confirm and figure out what's going on. So we'll do some clinical evaluations to look at, the factors maybe driving some of these things and making sure that you have enough range of motion for the sports you do. Make sure you have enough stability for the sports that you do, and provide a good foundation, right? And then from a clinical evaluation, we now step into kind of a more quantitative aspect. So if it's for a running assessment, we'll actually have you run. So we'll have you run at various speeds. And yes, we do work with various shoes. People have questions on what footwear is most effective for them, and we actually get them on the treadmill. We have an instrumented treadmill, so it gives us lots of data points. It's not just saying how fast you go, but we can actually look at running economy. We can look at body stress. We can look at symmetry. We can look at a number of metrics that will bore most people to death. But again, I want to find out the most specific information I can. So I have good quantitative data on how you run and how you play out, in a sense, and it gives me information, again, guide our treatment plan. So I'm using this to validate some of the things I've looked at. If it's for cycling, we do some instrumented assessment to figure out what happens to you on the bike, right? So what kinds of things are actually happening from a postural standpoint, from a alignment standpoint, and then we can make some corrections, right? So if it's bike fit, we'll do some things. Sometimes it's actually moving parts in the bike. Sometimes I've actually done bike fits where I've completely changed people's position and not moved one single thing on the bike. I've moved them on the bike. Okay, so again, posture and body alignment goes a long way. As far as running gait, again, if you've got form issues, we can actually use a real-time feedback module with our system that can actually show you what to do, and you can see in real time as you're running exactly if you're running symmetrical, if you're running a way that minimizes stress on you, and if you're running in a way which is efficient. And so I give you feedback, and you're seeing objectively on what to do, not just someone saying, oh, land more in your midfoot or whatever. It's a much more specific way to look at things. And then everybody leaves with a plan, right? So you're left with drills, exercises, corrective things to actually work to truly improve your form. It's the way that, I would like to see things done. It's the way I see things done. And to kind of go back real quick what you said about, carving out time, for your listeners who have coaches, I'd just go ahead and ask your coach point blank, what part of the week are we carving out to make sure I stay healthy and that I'm moving in a good fashion, right? That I'm able to keep myself stable and strong. And if your coach looks at you kind of funny, I'd possibly look from a coach. You need to make sure that you're looking at a comprehensive aspect of development. I'm pretty sure everybody listening here wants to do this stuff not just this summer, but for a long time. And, as you look at, what happens when we age and how tissues change, it's really, really important to make sure you're looking at things in a big picture perspective.
Yeah, and a couple things that you said. I want to make a point to people about what you said about bike fit and when you're working with somebody on the bike. Because, we've got some amazing bike fitters locally, and they fit the bike to you. This is what they say, right? But you've taken it a step further because of the specialty that you're in and the way that you see the body and the interaction with the machine and all that. And that is changing the person's position on the existing bike geometry without changing the geometry per se. And that's huge because again, the way bike fit has been marketed up to this point to the public in general is that we're going to change the bike to fix your problem, which sometimes works. Yeah, but there's an elegant aspect to also getting a different form while you're sitting on the bike itself. So it's this interactive extra piece. So
there's
really
a big
huge
difference. There's a big difference between fitting a bike to a rider and fitting a rider to a bike. Okay, so, my approach is all about, again, I tell people, when you come see me, you're an N of one, right? You're my experiment that day. So my goal is to make sure that we're figuring out how to harness your strengths fix your negatives, right, and put you in the best environment you could possibly be in. And so, yeah, we use a variety of, cues to make sure people are sitting optimally. So many people don't have a clue to how to sit on a bike properly. We talk about, how to sit properly. We talk about, putting your body in the correct position to take advantage of we call the length-tension relationship in the muscles, or how the muscles work in a more optimal fashion. We do postural cues. Again, I do drills. Again, going towards the idea of, core stability training, I teach people how to do core work actually on the bike as they ride. So there's some exercises you can do while you're actually riding. You don't have to go to the floor. There's some great things you can do while you're actually riding. So it's a nice way to kind of integrate things. And, I mean, honestly, if you can see how things really play out and you go, wow, I feel this difference when you're actually riding, that makes you more inclined to want to spend time doing it because you feel a change. So it's absolutely instrumental.
Yeah, and just a night and day difference. And this isn't to take away what other people are doing with bike fit. It's just something I wanted to share with you, because I think it's again unique to your perspective and your background. Not just a bike fitter, but starting as a biomechanicist and then working into working these other pieces in. So what else goes on up in Bend? Like you've got the lab. What other kinds of things go on up there?
Yeah, so we've got some of those great things. We've we had some different logistical issues when I was at UVA, and one of the reasons come up here is able to kind of get those barriers down. So we're actually able to have a much more of a local presence, and we've got some kind of what we call performance biomechanics classes. We have folks come in for 8 to 10 week blocks depending on the class and the sport, and so we actually do things to truly improve you, right? So we spend an hour each week going over drills and exercise corrections and things that make a difference. So we don't just do random exercises. We do exercises that have been shown to actually change performance, right? We do things that replicate the natural movements of the sports you're doing. We do things that replicate positions you're in. We do things that cue you into better alignment. And the idea is by giving people feedback and training and testing in good alignment, we can actually give people good information. And so if you practice the right way to move over and over and over again, when you get back into your sports, like, oh yeah, this is the same movement I practiced, 500 times in the past, few weeks doing my exercises. It's just giving people good feedback. So these performance biomechanics classes have been really instrumental in a lot of people's training. What else we do? We do a bunch of work for industry. We do product testing and shoe testing for a number of folks, and it's always fun to put this knowledge of science into product. So we do both validation and innovation work for a number of different companies, and it's definitely fun to kind of see how it plays out in the consumer marketplace. We've done everything from, again, footwear design to looking at the effects of vibration on cycling performance. So a lot of different avenues here has been fun to look at. And then we've got some elite folks in town who we kind of work really, really closely with. So some of our kind of rep athletes are sort of under the umbrella of the lab, and they basically have kind of carte blanche access to our care. So if they've got aches and pains and need us for injury reasons, we're here. We do, monthly assessments on them, so we actually have give them feedback on form and make sure they're optimizing, their mechanics from a form perspective. We actually do strength and conditioning plans for all these folks to make sure that they're actually keeping on top of their game, and we cycle those appropriately with their training to make sure that everything's getting better. When I say everything getting better, I don't mean just stronger, but I want to make sure that as we're improving strength and fitness, that we're actually seeing economy improve as well, right? So I want to see quantitative information show me that the things we're doing are making a difference in their sports. And we work very carefully to make sure that we're complementing everything they're doing and not distracting from that.
Awesome. So what's the best way for people to get in touch if they want to follow up and find out more about what you do and how you do it?
Yeah, for sure. If you want to check out reporegon.com, it's REP Oregon.com. It's at our website, and you can send an email to us, and we'll even stick you on our newsletter. And then you can obviously check out the book, Anatomy for Runners. There's also a blog that I keep called anathletesbody.com, so NANathletesbody.com. And I try and, I'm not a daily blogger, but when there's things out there I think that folks should kind of know and understand, I try and put some good information up there to help folks out. So.
Awesome. So I will go ahead and put those links in the show notes for everybody so they can just link over to you. But I want to thank you so much for joining us today, Jay. It's I mean, this has just piqued my curiosity even farther. So I'm going to have to come up and visit you.
Awesome, man. Looking forward to it. Yeah, come up. We got outside the lab, man, we got a bunch of fun stuff. There's a ton of great trails. There's about, 250 or 300 miles of trails. They're literally 2 miles from our facility. And there's about, 13 breweries in town now. So, you can go work hard and then party harder. So
Awesome combination. Yeah. So great. So folks, follow up with Jay, and like I said, show notes will have the links. So link on over, get on his newsletter list so you can know when he's going to be potentially in town or nearby, or when I believe there are events that go on up in Bend as well. There's camps, things like that.
Yep.
So again, thanks everybody for joining us, and this is Manny Aragon signing out for this episode of the Endurance Summit.